The start of Unshackle Your Mind, a transformative journey to end suffering and embrace infinite potential. Written by Kathryn Rollins, narrated by Stryver. Chapter 1: The Illusion of Suffering. Subchapter 1.1: The Root of Psychological and Emotional Pain. The human experience is often characterized by a pervasive sense of suffering, an inescapable cycle of psychological and emotional pain. We find ourselves trapped in a web of negative thoughts, beliefs, and emotions, constantly searching for a way out, yearning for relief from the inner turmoil that plagues our minds. But what if the very root of our suffering lies not in the external circumstances of our lives, but rather in our perception and interpretation of those circumstances? At the core of our suffering lies a fundamental misunderstanding of the nature of reality. We have been conditioned to believe that our happiness, fulfillment, and inner peace are dependent on the events and situations that unfold around us. We cling to the notion that if only we could control and manipulate our external world to align with our desires, we would finally be free from the grasp of suffering. However, this belief is nothing more than an illusion, a mirage that keeps us trapped in a never-ending cycle of pain and discontent. The truth is, our psychological and emotional pain stems from our resistance to what is, and our unwillingness to accept the present moment as it unfolds. We become attached to our thoughts, beliefs, and expectations, and when reality fails to meet these mental constructs, we suffer. We suffer not because of the events themselves, but because of our interpretation and judgment of those events. Our mind tends to label experiences as good or bad, right or wrong. That creates the very suffering we so desperately seek to avoid. The root of our suffering lies in our identification with the ego, the false sense of self that is shaped by our thoughts, memories, and beliefs. The ego constantly seeks validation, approval, and control, and when it is threatened or challenged, it reacts with fear, anxiety, and resistance. We become so entangled in the stories and narratives created by the ego that we lose touch with the present moment, the only reality that truly exists. To break free from the cycle of suffering, we must first recognize that our thoughts and emotions are not absolute truths, but rather fleeting and impermanent phenomena. We must learn to observe our inner world with a sense of detachment, without judgment or resistance. By cultivating mindfulness and present moment awareness, we begin to see through the illusion of the ego and connect with the deeper essence of our being. As we learn to embrace the present moment, we discover that the root of our suffering lies not in the circumstances themselves, but in our resistance to those circumstances. By accepting what is, without the need to change or control it, we find a profound sense of inner peace and liberation. We realize that our happiness and fulfillment are not dependent on external factors, but rather on our willingness to align with the flow of life, to surrender to the wisdom of the universe. In this transformative journey, we come to understand that the root of our psychological and emotional pain is a misunderstanding of our true nature. We are not the limited, fearful, and separate selves that the ego would have us believe, but rather infinite, boundless, and interconnected beings. As we awaken to this truth, we begin to see that suffering is not an inherent part of the human experience, but rather a result of our identification with the ego and our resistance to what is. By embracing the present moment, cultivating mindfulness, and recognizing the illusory nature of the ego, we can begin to untangle ourselves from the web of suffering and rediscover our innate well-being. We can learn to navigate life's challenges with grace, resilience, and a deep sense of inner peace. As we let go of our attachment to thoughts, beliefs, and expectations, we open ourselves up to the infinite potential of the present moment, and we discover that the key to ending suffering lies not in changing the world around us, but in transforming our perception and understanding of that world. The end of Unshackle Your Mind, a transformative journey to end suffering and embrace infinite potential. Written by Kathryn Rollins, narrated by Stryver.